Welcome to Switched On Thinking, a podcast that explores the real-world networking challenges faced by businesses of today and the future. Twice a month, we deliver insightful and informative analysis of the key role that networking technology plays in driving business success and ensuring business continuity. Switched On Thinking is brought to you by NETGEAR, delivering innovative networking solutions you can count on, so you can spend more time on what matters most, growing your business. Now, here's your host, acclaimed author and tech columnist, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Switched On Thinking podcast, where every 2 weeks I discuss how NETGEAR and its partners are solving the real-world networking challenges of today and the future, but with real-world use cases and human stories behind that technology too. And in today's episode, I'm going to draw from my own experiences of just expecting free Wi-Fi in any small business I visit, whether that be a cafe, a coffee shop, or even a hair salon. But as an ex-IT guy, I also know that providing staff Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi, adding a printer, voice over IP phones, security cameras, and so many more devices all take their toll on the network of any small business. So today, I want to explore how cloud-managed networks can actually help a business grow, and also learn more about the advantages of a cloud-managed network. So today, I've invited Shaheen and Arend, who are going to join me in a conversation about all this and other topics in today's podcast. But enough from me. Let's get them both onto the podcast now. Welcome to the Switched On Thinking podcast, guys. Shaheen, can you begin by telling the listeners a little about yourself and your role at NETGEAR?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Neil. My name is Shaheen Kazi. I'm the Director of Product Line Management for Insight and Services. And Insight is a cloud-based remote device and network management solution.
Hello, and I'm Arend. I'm Arend Karssies from NETGEAR Benelux. I'm the Regional Director taking care of the day-to-day activities we have in the Netherlands.
Although things have changed during the global pandemic at the moment, would you agree, Shaheen, that for many resellers, the problems and challenges that were present even before COVID, and possibly tell me a little bit more about how they need to meet their new evolving needs of their customers? Because there's so much that's changed over the last few months, isn't there?
Absolutely, Neil. The thing about these big disaster scenarios like the pandemic we're having is that they always bring to surface and highlight weaknesses that already exist in any system. And certainly in the case of the channel and particularly with value-added resellers, the reality is that they've been struggling for the last decade plus. With the rise of online retailers, it's been very challenging for these traditional VARs to remain profitable, just to remain profitable and even make a living, let alone actually grow their business. And the fact is that it's very hard to compete with the e-com, the large online retailers, because they have the economies of scale on their side, which means that for these value-added resellers, their margins keep declining and are just razor thin. And the other part of it is that, they really need to focus on the value-added piece of their value-added reseller acronym. And it's an opportunity for them to do that. But it means that they need to deliver services. And while some of the VARs were already providing services, many VARs were providing services, but typically those services are very ad hoc. And what I mean by that is that they were time and materials based for the most part. If a customer wanted, a site, a new location set up, or a brand new business that they were starting, and they wanted, it was a small business and they did not really have any in-house expertise, they would reach out to resellers who would then do a survey of the premise and then come up with a list of devices, and then on a time and materials basis, add the services to both survey the site, but also to install the devices, to configure the devices, to set up and configure the network, all on a time and materials basis, which is fine. But the problem with that model is that, one, It's a very linear approach to business, which means that you can only do as much as there are hours in a day and the size of your team within your VAR business. So if I'm a VAR with 3 employees and myself, so a total of 4, I am limited to how many hours the 4 of us can put in. And also I have a geographic boundary because I can only really drive maybe an hour, maximum a couple of hours from my home base. And that's basically the radius of my business, which means that my growth is stymied by both time, resources, and location, actually 3. And it means that my growth will at the most be a kind of slow linear growth. Also, I don't have an opportunity to develop a relationship with my customers because every job is a one-off. And once that job is completed, there is no reason for me to have any expectation that I will have any ongoing business with that customer again. So there is an opportunity in the market that we have today, and something that is, certainly been highlighted with the COVID-19 pandemic, is that there are technologies available today that allow these VARs to very successfully migrate into an MSP or a managed services business and be able to deliver services breaking through all those 3 boundaries that I spoke of, the time and time and materials limitations, which is a resource constraint, the limitation of geography, the ability to really only have linear growth. There's an opportunity to break through all of that. And it is by using technology that allows for remote configuration and management. It allows for remote ongoing monitoring, support services, troubleshooting, ongoing fine-tuning of the networks, providing ongoing support, firmware management. And as those businesses grow, to really be a partner of where these VARs can be partners to those small businesses, helping those small businesses grow very efficiently. As I had mentioned, in the traditional model, every sale is ad hoc and it's so transactional, which means you have very little predictability on how you're going to grow your business next year and the year after. But with the recurring revenue model, because you're developing a relationship with your customers, it provides VARs and the VARs who are migrating to MSPs a very different opportunity to be able to effectively predict how they are going to grow their business. If they've got 100 customers in year 1, they're probably going to retain the bulk of those customers in year 2. And they can focus, because they have all these tools that automate so many repeated tasks, it allows them to grow even with that same team. So for example, I had mentioned a team of 4. With that same team, you can actually grow your business significantly beyond the capabilities of just the 4 on a time and materials basis. So that's all the goodness that comes from this model. And it's been exposed by COVID-19 because now we are in a situation where the need for remote configuration, the ability to remotely deploy a network, the ability to have ongoing monitoring and management has just come to surface. Because earlier, prior to pre-COVID-19, if I was a small business and I had 2 sites, my networking purview was really those 2 sites. But assume that I have about 10 employees at each site. Now I actually have 22 sites. So my networking needs have just grown exponentially because I now need to extend my network into every one of my employees' homes, which means that essentially my company's network has extended into every one of those homes, and I need help. I need somebody to, allow me to bring my network into each of my employees' homes and then be able to configure them, and then on an ongoing basis be able to monitor them, to be able to troubleshoot, be able to provide support if my employees need it, etc.
And rather than just focusing on the challenges, can you tell me a little bit more about the networking opportunities and the kind of benefits for VARs and even SMBs too?
Yeah, so Shaheen said a lot about it already, and I would really like to point out that for our VARs, it's really important for them to understand that they will have more opportunities to have an improved engagement with their end customer. They can really speak with them on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, whatever they like, in order to ensure that they are engaged and that they are on top of their business as well. And that if something pops up with their customer, they are first to the spot to basically solve this and help their customers out. Second to that, it's really important for the VARs to understand that moving on with their business model, they can apply a recurring revenue model. They can make money on a monthly basis by selling these services towards their customers rather than actually selling boxes once a year, once per 3 years, once per 5 years, and hoping that they need to replace something later down the line. When they think about the business they currently have today with their customers, it can be, for example, the wireless network of their customer, they can also further expand that business scope they have today with their end customers. They can expand to storage, they can expand towards switches, even surveillance, and they can keep on adding services and hardware sales to that single customer. And by doing that, expanding their business and their footprint within this customer. And by doing all of this, they can actually reclaim the status of being a value-added reseller rather than just a box mover. Because they start to add services, even proactive services. And on top of that, especially during the pandemic where we are in today, they can not only, let's say, manage the office network of their customer or the school's network, but they can also manage the network of the teacher at home, if necessary, or from the employees at home, in order to ensure business continuity and data security when the employees of their customers starts to work from home.
And it's often said that the last experience that anyone has becomes the minimum expectation for the experience that they want everywhere. I mean, every coffee shop, hair salon, cafe, and everywhere that people go now, they expect Wi-Fi. And what we don't often talk about is these SMBs, as well as professional services, also have things like printers, cameras, and many other things to worry about that are all competing for bandwidth at the same time. And if we go, at the moment, we're looking at the back to school season, and schools too have Wi-Fi for students, faculty, staff, even visiting parents, and local government offices, same story. That list goes on and on. So Shaheen, do you have any comparisons between having and not having a cloud managed network for an SMB? Because it's two completely different worlds, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, it's interesting that you should bring that up, because over the last decade plus, we've seen a significant growth in the needs, in the networking needs of small businesses. And it's interesting because while online retailers, as I mentioned earlier, are cutting into kind of the traditional VAR model, which is selling hardware at margin plus, at some kind of margin, what we are seeing in parallel in the same timeline is that there's actually been a significant growth in the needs of small business networking itself. So think back to like 2008, 2009, when the smartphone, when the iPhone first came out, and then it was followed by a slew of smartphones, and it very rapidly took off, which meant that small businesses, any business lining up Main Street, all the restaurants and the cafes and the auto shop garages, the hair salons, nail salons, I mean, you name it, laundromats, all of them have a situation where you have a waiting room. And the expectation of the end consumer or the customers to those small businesses is that when they walk in, if they are asked to wait the expectation is there should be free Wi-Fi provided by that business. So right away, you have the need for these small businesses to extend their wireless network to provide guest Wi-Fi, which means they have to isolate their internal business wireless network and wired network from the guest Wi-Fi. So that's a significant level of complexity added on to a traditional micro business network. And additionally, you also have many new networked devices, even within the smallest of these businesses, right? So security, surveillance, cameras. Often there are networked devices within them. Printers, you brought up printers. That's certainly one. There are others as well. Increasingly, even in manufacturing and small machine shops, you're seeing IoT come into play. So all of those means that that the networking needs of these small businesses have grown, and which means that there's added complexity and it needs professional help to set it up correctly. And that's an opportunity for our VARs to come in and fill that gap. You also mentioned schools, and in particular, what's happening now as a result of the pandemic. And, certainly schools are beginning to reopen, and kids, as well as colleges, are all kind of going back. But we know that, and hopefully everything will normalize, over the next, certainly over the next year. But the point is, are we ever going to go back to the way things were, which is, all working exclusively on-prem, going to school exclusively on-site? I think in general, the thesis is that we will not be having that kind of clean-cut binary situation again. There will be a hybrid model where there will need to be an opportunity for us to work from home, for us to be able to school from home, take college-level classes, and actually, be part of a university, but still have the ability to do some of my classwork from home, which means, again, that there's a need to extend out capabilities. If I'm the IT department of a school or a school district, I have to really start thinking about the long-term vision of how I'm going to provide these capabilities so that students can study from home as well as when they come into class. And it means that, there's a lot of work for those IT managers or the MSPs who are providing those services to them to think through how they're going to extend not just the network, but also kind of a secure network that goes hand in hand. How are they going to extend policies that they set up for within their classrooms to extend those out to student homes and employee homes?
Thanks, Shaheen. There's so many great examples there, but I'd love to try and bring it to life a little bit more. And we are at the moment, it's in the back to school season. So I'm curious, Arend, when it comes to VARs, have you encountered any that have become a little bit nervous or scared to make that leap? And do you have any stories or use cases that would just bring that story to life?
One of the stories which pops up in my mind first is a story about a VAR we have in the Netherlands, who was actually used to sell for years and years just the hardware to a school nearby his office. And he kept on doing the maintenance and the installations, running cables, and he did all the day-to-day stuff as well. But the business was basically not moving anywhere. And the only moment he had, let's say, contact with the school was when he needed to fix an issue or to get things done in the network. And then we spoke with him about all the business opportunities he would have if he would move this single school to a managed environment by Insight Pro, by basically changing a little bit hardware, which is Insight Pro compatible, by highlighting all the features he could provide to the school from a security, business continuity, etc., etc. And he gave it a try. And he started that slightly before the COVID-19. And he started by doing that, and he started to add all these services to the table, and the school started to migrate it as well. And then he came fully on board with all the remote functionality. And when the pandemic came, basically, he was also immediately able to start managing the offices at home from the teachers who were, let's say, forced basically to provide e-learning to the students. And because he was ready just in time for this, let's say, remote management capabilities, he fully embraced it actually quite quick. And by doing that and getting convinced about all the opportunities provided by this ecosystem inside Pro, he started to basically expand the service offering towards this school. And the school liked it so much, the way he basically changed the way he managed their network, and also keeping the network secure and safe and up and running, especially throughout this e-learning scenario, throughout the pandemic. Other schools in the region came to him and asked him to also make an offer to add their school site to this management system of him. So this is a great example for all the VARs that if you just start slowly and step by step, you will get more business opportunities soon.
And Shaheen, for everybody listening, what are the key differentiating factors of NETGEAR Cloud versus others? Because it is a crowded market out there, and a lot of people listening will be bombarded by choice. So what would you say the main things that set you apart are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the term cloud has been thrown around randomly, and, because it's a buzzword, it's become very jargony. But if you look at the true capabilities of cloud, and which are very significant. I mean, the cloud really provides you infrastructure on demand. So the key differentiator for NETGEAR Insight is the fact that we built, Insight is cloud native, which means that it was built from the get-go on the cloud. It was architected with the idea of scale, with the idea of multi-tenancy. It was built with the idea that within a single Insight Pro account that you could accommodate many customers, and each of those customers could have many locations, and each of those locations could have many devices across their wired and wireless networks. So it was architected from the get-go with that vision in mind, which is very different from a solution where a cloud may be, in some cases, cloud is just a marketing term. But even where a cloud is actually added, it is an afterthought, and it's been added typically just as a launcher to launch into what are essentially siloed, site-specific solutions. And the end result is it's a very different experience for our users and our customers. On NETGEAR Insight, a customer has the ability to, if the customer is of an MSP, they have the ability within a single pane of glass, a single console, to be able to see across all of their customers' sites, all their different customers, all their different sites, and to see if there are any issues, to make sure that everything is up and healthy, and then be able to very quickly and simply be able to drill down into a single customer if there's an issue, into a specific network location of that customer, identify the devices that are the root cause of the issue, and be able to fix those issues. So it's that level of simplicity and the efficiency of being able to surface up, to be able to see that the view across all the customers, and then be able to so simply and quickly be able to drill down. This is not possible when you do not have a solution that was architected for this from the get-go. There are, of course, a lot of additional advantages while going a level deeper, is the way that we have built in so many automation features. For example, you can centrally configure and manage the devices within your network on both the wired side, with the ability to configure multiple switches in a single go, the ability to apply policies across ports and be able to lag ports across all the switches. Similarly, on the wireline, on the wireless side, be able to create SSIDs and to deploy them across many APs, to apply security and radio policies across all of those access points. So that's an example unified and centralized management. Other examples of that is the way that we have schedulers. We have schedulers for Wi-Fi, where for security reasons, you may want to turn down Wi-Fi at certain hours. The way we have schedulers for power over Ethernet scheduling, also for firmware updates, where you can schedule firmware updates and Insight takes care of it behind the scenes. So all of these automation components make the whole case for that I had brought up earlier, which is to the ability to grow businesses while keeping your team relatively small. And then, of course, other differentiators. So the fact that we have multi-tenancy, that's a core differentiator for us. We have the concept of different roles. We've also got the concept of customized reporting. We have dashboards that highlight certain elements and make them bring data up and visualize it. We also have alerts and notifications engine that is very highly configurable. So each user can basically set it up to exactly what their needs are. All of those are key differentiators that we bring, both from the big differentiators of having architected it correctly for the cloud, all the way down to some of the features that we've brought in to centralize and to automate a lot of the repeated functions.
And if possible, Shaheen, I'd love to tackle the elephant in the room, which is, why is there still so much fear and suspicion around cloud management? And you're right what you said a few moments ago, because it is a term that's being bandied around a lot, and maybe that's why it is being treated with suspicion in some areas. So how do you think we can address those kind of challenges?
So it's strange, but it's so true for humans, right? That anything that we don't understand, and usually things that are new that we are unfamiliar with, always create fear and suspicion, right? And the way to break through any of these scenarios, and it certainly applies to cloud, is education and awareness building and access. I think that is how you break through fear and suspicion. Is what are the advantages? Because the cloud has many advantages, right? It allows for infrastructure on demand, which means that you can scale in a way that would not be possible. You can scale within, the time compression related to scale, and the ease of scale has been compressed so significantly. That's a huge advantage. And certainly it makes remote access and all of the things that we need that the pandemic has highlighted. It brings the goodness of the cloud really kind of comes to surface, because it allows you to extend your network into your employees' homes, to extend the networks into students' homes with ease and simplicity. And that's kind of the advantage of the cloud. So I'm thinking that with this event that we are all living through right now, that a lot of this fear and suspicion is going to go away, because people are going to begin to see, the power and the advantage of the cloud.
Thanks, Shaheen. And Arend, do you have any tips on how listeners can go from traditional box selling approach to actually becoming a value-added reseller? And also, how is that going to impact consumers?
Actually, the tip is quite simple. For all of the resellers out there thinking, where do I need to start? I would say, just start with it. Just start by adding some services to your business offering towards your customers. And let us help you with defining the services you can add the best and how to sell that toward your end customers. And by starting and by learning and by making all these small steps, you will eventually get at a level of being an MSP you would like to be as a reseller. And the good news is, the only thing you have to do is to basically sell the supported hardware to your end customers. We have developed a full backend. We host the platform. We keep it up to date. So you have no costs in advance by setting up your own data center or whatsoever. The only thing you need to do is just start, and you will be live in seconds, and we will have your back in case you need it. And by doing that, you can finally add value again to your customers and set yourself apart from the rest.
And many SMBs learned this year the importance of having a network infrastructure that supports remote working. It used to be a nice to have, whereas now it's critical. But I mean, where do we go from here? What do the next 18 months look like? And what kind of role do you think NETGEAR will play in that immediate future?
The opportunity for VARs and MSP is going to continue to grow out their businesses, really helping their small business customers be able to meet the challenges of the time and extend out those small businesses' networks into their employees' homes. And what we're going to see post-COVID-19, when hopefully everything will be back to normal, is that we will still have to be prepared for these scenarios, and also that a lot of employees have found, because they've been doing this for the last year, that they can work just as effectively at home and will choose to work part of the time, at least part of the time, from home. It means that employees, there'll be, a mutual agreement between employers and employees that, yes, as long as you are just as productive working from home, it's an opportunity for them to say, okay, you don't have your 2-hour commute, but it means that I can actually get you to be even more productive potentially. And for the employee, it's an opportunity to have a little more life-work balance. So my guess is that what we are going to see is a hybrid model.
Arend, I'm curious, is there anything that personally excites you about the role that technology is going to play in that future?
I would say that for us as NETGEAR, but definitely also for our resellers, the value-added resellers, it's so exciting to always reach out to your customers and explain them about how the latest technology will, let's say, positively impact the way they can run and how do you say that? How they can run and expand their business opportunities towards the customers. What also excites me is the fact that we keep on adding services and products towards this ecosystem inside Pro in order to give capabilities to our resellers to keep on expanding the service offering they offer to their customers.
Excellent. And I'm conscious we've covered a lot of ground today. So for everyone listening, if they do have any questions or want to explore the topics further, what's the best way of finding you online and even contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Yeah, so the best way to go is just go to our website, netgear.com/insight. There you will find all the information you need, but obviously you can also contact your local sales team.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I, for one, have learned so much more about how cloud-managed networks can help businesses grow, and also how embracing cloud networking can actually provide businesses with that flexibility that they all need now to succeed. And also with remote Wi-Fi 6 technologies thrown into the mix too, I think Wi-Fi 6 is going to be better than ever before. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I cannot thank Arend and Shaheen enough for coming on and sharing how cloud-managed networks can help a business grow. I also loved hearing about how Wi-Fi 6 wireless is going to be better than ever. But more than anything, I just loved hearing that very human use case of a VAR that wanted to make the step but felt very nervous about doing so. Because I think that is something that will resonate with every small business out there, and indeed user. But I'm afraid we're out of time already. So that's it for today's episode of Switched On Thinking. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a rating and review. And if you enjoyed today's show, join me in another 2 weeks where we'll further explore how NETGEAR and its partners are solving the real-world networking challenges of today and the future.